What it do, what the business is, it's yours truly, LT the Don Juan, last dark of the night, first crack of the sun. We back at it once again to bring a little bit of light into the darkness of the world. Today we are talking about the movie The Truman Show with Jim Carrey. As we all know, if y'all been watching any of my past videos, I just got done talking about the movie The Number 23. So we want to incorporate the number 23 into the Truman Show, right? So picking up off where we left off, hopefully I watched any of the last videos considering the number 23 because each character is important to building upon each narrative. Um, but we can continue using superposition and quantum physics as a narrative of expressing these dual concepts between man, woman, husband, wife, divine, feminine, divine, masculine, so on and so forth, right? So we'll continue using those narratives in this particular video, and we'll break down the movie The Truman Show and see if we can find any of these aspects of truth or mystery here. This is for entertainment purposes only, but as you all know, we like to provoke thought, so hopefully we can all learn something today. As you know, do your homework, do your own work, go check on any of this information for your own purposes so that you can build upon and or grow and or develop. The more I'm recognizing in these times that these verily may be specific times that we're living in, and there are people that I probably don't know that are experiencing some unique things in their life. So hopefully we can build and grow together, learn together. We living in a time of information, but as we're gonna learn today, information only is gonna get you part of the way, right? You can lead a horse to the water if you will. But continuing on, right? So what is the Truman Show all about? Well, the first thing that stands out to me about the whole movie is that his name is Truman Burbank. Now, when I think of Truman, I think of Harry S. Truman. That's the president that was the president during the time of World War II. Him and FDR, obviously, right? But he stepped in in 1945, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe he is the one that dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. One of the characters speaks Japanese, one of the female characters in the movie in particular. But these are all just little subtle peculiarities. They show you the Chinese aspects and drops in the back tones, just like they showed in the number 23 with those little Chinese lanterns with the Chinese words and letters on it, right? They continue to show you these aspects in retrospect to the lunar solar calendar. If you watched my last video, I showed you the 19-year cycle and the 210-day aspect to those 19-year cycles, right? That's associated with leap year and so on and so forth. These are necessary to understand because we got to understand why 210 is so specific. Why is it important? Beyond the aspect of looking at it like it's just a birthday or something like that. Like, how does this apply in more ways than just Christ's birthday, right? But continuing on. So, Truman was one of the presidents that was a president during a time of war, right? Now, this particular Truman is living inside of a bubble, right? He's living in this world that he knows nothing about, in the sense that he doesn't know that it has eyes on him and that everybody is a character in his particular life, right? He has to have a motion of discovery in this particular aspect of the movie. So what's going on with Mr. Burbank, right? What is he going through? Well, if we watch the number 23, we know he was a dog catcher, right? This Hermanubis character, taking people from one life to the next life, the messenger, so on and so on and so forth, right? We've seen all these different aspects pop up many times, all the way from the night of the comet, right? We continue to see these characters pop up because we have to understand these many aspects, biblically speaking, right? But continuing on. So, we got Mr. Truman Burbank, who is the main character. Now, what's the main thing that stand out to me about this man living inside this bubble, if you will, world within the world, if you will, right? Um, Besides his name being Truman, like a president who is involved with dropping atomic weapons and nuclear testing on the world, um, it made me think about the bubble he was living in. Because at one point he was trying to get to Chicago. Now, if y'all watched any of my past videos, Chicago pops up many, many times. One speakingly, it popped up in the show considering the TV show called Terra Nova, which is where the people had to go back to prehistoric times to save humanity. But the people were living in a bubble also, kind of like Truman's bubble, but in way more critical conditions, way more harsh, and they probably were very aware of how critical the circumstances were. But they had a portal to another world, to prehistoric times within their bubble, if you will. And that bubble was in Chicago, speakingly. But we bring that up because I think it applies in some way, shape, form, or fashion as we get into this movie. So, what do we notice as soon as the movie come on? Truman is talking to a mirror, or he's talking to a camera in a box, if you will, right? Now, we automatically know that we have to perceive Jim Carrey or Truman as a Christ-like figure, right? Maybe that's all the main characters in every movie, right? To some degree, shape, form, or fashion. Remember, I showed you the many characters of Jim Carrey through his characters in different movies, just like Bruce Almighty, right? Um, that one is kind of one of the obvious type of movies, right? Concerning some type of biblical aspect of man and God. But continuing on. So, one thing they let you know off top is that um, this TV show is based around Truman Burbank. Um, that, they want to incorporate private life becoming public life, right? So they put up all these cameras everywhere on people's everything they wearing, everything that they driving, everything that they, surrounded by. There's cameras everywhere, right? Kind of like today's world in real life, right? Except in this particular bubble, if you will, that he's living in, these cameras are specifically for him. The people set within this bubble are specifically for him. Everything is evolving around him. So if you ever think that this world revolves around you, well, so did Truman Burbank. And he wasn't too wrong about his suspicions. Now, continuing on. So, the creator of this show, right? The creator name is Christoph, right? Christoph itself means the Christ bearer, right? So we know that Christoph has some aspect of Christ as well, but see, he is not the material form of Christ. He is actually Christ to me within the womb, because his HQ and his headquarters is within inside the moon of this set of this world that he built for Truman himself, right? Um, Now, Truman itself sounds like an interesting name, and it sounds kind of suspect already when we think about it, right? So, what does Truman itself mean, actually, right? What does Truman actually mean? Let's go ahead and check it out. All right, Truman name meaning. It means faithful man, right? It means loyal one. Man, that's pretty interesting right there. So it means faithful man and a loyal man. That's pretty unique because I think for anything to be done in this time, it's gonna take that type of person, or type of people, if you will, somebody that's faithful and somebody that's true. Um, and I feel that's plural, if you will. So we know that they want to turn a private life into the public life. So Truman, the faithful and loyal man, right, because he's Christ in some way, shape, form, or fashion, become manifest in the world. In a world that kind of like he had on number 23, he had amnesia in some type of way, except in this movie, it wasn't because he had amnesia. He just was born into the material world that he had to discover there was more to it than he was aware of, which it wouldn't take long in this movie to find out. Um, so the first thing I notice is the color of the house. His house is yellow. I know this is symbolic of the sun. So obviously we know that Truman has this characteristics of the sun, if you will, because he's representing Christ in this aspect. And we know that Christoph is kind of the radio head, if you will. He's speaking from above or controlling things from above. So hence his name, Christoph, the Christ bearer, right? And Truman is who he's giving birth to in the physical. That's going to be like his begotten son, right? So he takes it very pridefully and seriously and watchfully, watching Truman, if you will. It's a live feed that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They watch everything he do, I guess, except for making love to his wife, perhaps, which is also a plant, right? Everybody's a character. Everybody's a plant. Everybody is involved. Now, usually this would be some sense of paranoia for somebody to think these type of things back in this time when the movie came out. That would be like gang stalking or something like that, if you will. But Truman is not aware of this gang stalking. He has no idea that everybody is pretty much a stage in the world that he lives in, and that the world he lives in is a complete set, right? Everybody's a character.
I tell you what, if your granddad has one weakness, it's bitches. Of course, they're my weakness too.
What do you want with me?
It's complicated, Huey. I'm a secret agent sent to spy on you. Okay, maybe it's not that complicated.
If this house is not done, it's... Do spies normally introduce themselves to people they spy on? What spy school did you go to?
I'm too old to be sneaking around.
Excuse us, coming through.
What if I tell someone right now?
You tried that earlier in the kitchen, remember? By the way, I wasn't really in the bathroom taking a dump, but man. Oh, that brother of yours is a hoot. And your grandfather? Those two need their own sitcom.
Leave me alone.
Look, just because my job is to watch your every move and eavesdrop on every telephone call and monitor your every email doesn't mean we can't be friends.
Excuse me, did you notice me talking to someone a second ago right here, dressed like y'all?
Wasn't really looking. Sorry.
Where are we putting the fried chicken dispenser?
I mean, everything we see is a false reality. It's like Big Brother, The Matrix, whatever you want to call it. While we're watching each other, they're watching us. All the time.
So the next thing I noticed about the house, which represents the sun, right, or the temple, if you will, like the Temple of Solomon, right, the Temple of the Sun. He's coming outside, and I noticed the number is 36, representing the 3 sixes, if you will, representing man coming into material form. Now, to show you this family and or man coming into material form, he shows you his neighbors who live across the street, which is a black family. A man and a wife and his daughter, a little girl, right? And this is a routine thing, so that means every day that he gets up and comes outside, he sees this black family and greets them every day. Symbolic of man in some way, shape, form, or fashion, 3-6 or 3 sixes, if you will. 36 also representing of no nobility, of no genealogy, if you will, right? So we know that's in the Greek and Hebrew Strongs. This is to symbolize being from the order of Melchizedek, right? Because we know that Christ and or Melchizedek, this high priestly order, it comes from a background of no genealogy, so to speak, if you will. And you can look that up when we talk about speakingly with Abraham in the Bible, right? Abraham is one of the many, or one of the people speakingly, in the Bible, who actually met Melchizedek. But continuing on. So remember, of no noble birth, low, insignificant, no genealogy to speak of when it comes to royalty or royalhood, if you will. Now, it also means Abitu, right? Or Abitu. That means father of goodness. Now, in the number 23, we spoke of Miss Widow Dawkins, whose husband perished, who would have been Christ in some way. And then we also spoke of her name meaning the son of goodness, or her name meaning the son of goodness, Dawkins, the son of goodness. So right here, Abitub in 36 means the father of goodness, right? Or my father is goodness. Now this actually is associated with genealogy when it comes to the Bible, and is a reference point to the genealogy of Christ in some way, shape, form, or fashion, because Abitub is a character from the Bible, right? So this is what it says when we're looking at the BibleHub.com. It says foreshadowing of redemption through genealogy. It says genealogies in Scripture often look forward to the coming of Messiah by tracking covenant lineage. Matthew 1 through 17. While Abitub himself is not in the messianic line, his inclusion models the same meticulous recording keeping that ultimately validates the genealogy of Jesus Christ. In this way, Abitub stands as one small link in the larger chain, demonstrating that not one word has failed all of his good promise, right? In Joshua 23:14, right? So this is speaking of hidden faithfulness, right? It says Abitub is never associated with exploits, yet his name is preserved for eternity, right? Ministry that seems unnoticed by the world is still recorded before God. Hebrews 6:10. That's deeper than I can speak. It says value of heritage, right? The chronicler's diligence urges believers to cherish spiritual ancestry and to pass on a clear testimony of faith to succeeding generations. So you see the number 36 at the beginning of the movie is already speaking of genealogy and the messianic line of Christ and Melchizedek order in some way, shape, form, or fashion, right? Continuing on. We see this black family across the street for some reason, and everything is on autopilot, yet he doesn't know it just quite yet, right? One of the first things he says is while he's in the house before he leaves the house for the day, while he's in the bathroom talking in the mirror, is that if and when he dies, if something happened to him, he wants to be food if he dies, right? Well, this right here is already making me think about Christ and communion, right? Bread and wine, right? We already talked about this in my last video when one of the numbers spoke of essence and bone. And we're talking about metaphorically speaking, ritualistically speaking, but not literally in the sense that we're going to be bone and flesh, drinking and eating. These are all symbolic of some universal aspect of knowing Christ, right? And doing it in remembrance of Christ is just another way of acknowledging some universal truth once you understand these things. Everything else is to veer you off or distract you or to scare you from knowing what's real. But continuing on. Like, how you not going to practice witchcraft if you don't go know what witchcraft is? How you not going to practice necromancy if you don't go study at least what any of that stuff is? You have to know your enemy in some way, shape, form, or fashion in order to know not to go learn the ways of that nation. Well, father means don't learn the ways of that nation in practice, right? I'm sure Daniel was well aware of what the Chaldeans were practicing, the diviners were practicing, right? I'm sure he was well aware of their methods. I'm sure Moses was well aware of Pharaoh's little minions' ways, right? Well taught, right? Well learned in the ways of the world in some way, shape, form, or fashion, right? But continuing on. So his neighbor's name is Mr. Spencer, which stays next door to him. Mr. Spencer has a dog named Pluto, right? Which is a Dalmatian. Now, if we go back to the movie number 23, Walter, or Jim Carrey, if you will, was given a cake for his birthday, right? With a Dalmatian on it with a red hat, like Santa Claus, right? This is to signify the whole Christ-like nature of everything. This is also to signify the spots, the many spots of the death, the scourging that Christ suffered, the many stripes of Christ, which I showed y'all in the harrowing of hell, right? Where he had all those stripes and markings on him for all the discouraging that was done to him during the time of his crucifixion, if you will. So the Dalmatian is not only symbolic of that. Think about the Dalmatian symbolic of the fire dog, right? When we talking about the fire department and the fireman, the Dalmatian, if you will, Marshall, if we talking about Paw Patrol, right? Um, he is symbolic of being the fire dog, if you will, or the fire hound, if you will. This is the Hermanubis symbolism yet again, right? Showed in the movie, in both movies at this particular point, right? And just like Ned, the dog on the number 23, gave the spirit, symbolic of giving the spirit, come down onto Walter or Jim Carrey. Pluto, right? The dog in the Truman Show is running up on him in the same way. Him running up on him is symbolic of the transference of him being given the spirit, come down to earth, right? And when we also think about dogs, we know that those sirens, the dogs always howl at the sirens as if them ambulances or these fire trucks is like the dog god to them. And every time they hear the sirens go off, dogs act like they gotta howl at the sirens as if that's their dog god or something that they know got the strongest and most broadest howl or something like that, right? So that's why you see dogs go crazy in that way. And who set the frequency or tone for dogs to go crazy like that, right? Not only that, when we think about these sirens and the Dalmatian, you have the caduceus yet again. We know that the serpent staff, if you will, is associated back to Moses and Aaron, and it's also associated back to Hermes, if you will, right? Which I showed you in the Newfoundland seal when we talked about the movie Night of the Comet, right? Or the seal of the Newfoundland period, which will pop up again in some way, shape, form, or fashion, because we have to talk about Nicaragua, which also pops up in this movie yet again. And you think all these places and these movies that's separated by space and time and different characters and directors, you think they don't carry the same advertisement or message, if you will, but lo and behold, we'll look into it further and see if that's the truth or not, right? So, Spencer, we already seen the name Spencer before several times, even when we talked about the tornado, right? So we know that Spencer obviously carries some weight in his name because Spencer is the steward, he is the administrator, he is the dispenser of provisions, right? So I feel like that's symbolic of Christ in every way, shape, form, or fashion, which is why he has the dog, or he's the dog walker, right? Because anybody that's the dog walker is the person that is walking people to and or from afterlife, and that the dog walking is symbolic of him having control of either side, right? Life and death. That's why after Christ died and resurrected, it said that he had the keys and he became the king over life and death, right? So y'all got to look more into that if y'all don't know y'all scripture. But I throw it up there for y'all just so y'all can have it, you know. But continuing on. Um, so the dog, Pluto, which is symbolic of Hades, if you will, and the planet Pluto, which is in Roman mythology, right? They signify that to show you that that's symbolic of the dog star, which we already saw Sirius Leary in the number 23. So here we go again, rolling over into the Truman Show. That name Sirius is going to pop up again. And just in case you thought that Pluto or Hades or Mr. Spencer next door being the distributor, having this father-like figure representation, just like Christoph, right? Um, they're gonna further implement this dog star or this Sirius implementation into it further, right? Because soon as the dog hops up off of Jim Carrey, the next thing you know, light or a lantern falls out of the ceiling of the bubble that they in, and it just so happened to be, of all the stars that could have fell up out the ceiling, it was Sirius 9 Canis Major, right? So we already seen Sirius pop up in the number 23. Speakingly of these Dagon and or Dogon character-like species from another star system, right? We know that these have associations with the Bible in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Now, because of the things that you see them wearing, that give them this fish-like attributes, we know that Nimrod was associated with these garments or these fish-like attributes as well, right? And we know that Nimrod is also associated with Jacob and Esau, if you will, the brothers, if you will, right? The twins.
Oh, little star, how I wonder what you are. Well, today we're going to solve that mystery for you. It's the same star that's been on your Christmas tree the whole time. The brightest star in the sky. The red dog star, Sirius A and B. The so-called brown dwarf star is actually a twin binary star that takes 49.9 years to orbit our planet and is located 8.6 light years from Earth. Sirius is located in the Canis Major constellation, hence the dog star, as you can see right there, MTV2 for the twin dog star, nicknamed the Big Dog. Esoterically, Sirius is our spiritual sun, or the higher self of our sun. Sirius is the heart chakra of our physical sun. Sirius is 4,000 times hotter than the sun. During the dog days of summer, when Sirius disappears into the sun's glowing light, some say our physical sun is embracing our spiritual sun. After such a celestial union, a type of rebirth or resurrection occurs 70 days later. It's where you get the Egyptian myth of Horus, Isis, and Osiris. Orion is Osiris. Now you can see just how much bigger Sirius is than our Earth and the Sun. Sirius is also known as the Star of Bethlehem. The Orion constellation is the three wise men. Now, all mystery schools in religion go back to Sirius. Sirius, the origin of all esoteric mystery traditions. It is the blazing star of Freemasonry. Albert Pike once said, "The blazing star in our lodges, we have already said, represents Sirius, Anubis, or Mercury, guardian and guide of souls. Our ancient English brethren also considered an emblem of the sun. In the old lectures they said, the blazing star or glory in the center refers us to that grand luminary, the sun, which enlightens the earth and by its general influence dispenses blessings to mankind." Now, Sirius transmits its energy, high-charged particles, to our entire system via the magnetic field lines, the ley lines, the dragon lines. Sirius has magical abilities and associations with higher dimensional frequencies of consciousness. Sirius was astrologically the foundation of the entire Egyptian religious system. It was the embodiment of Isis, the sister and consort of the god Osiris, who appeared in the sky as Orion and reborn again as Horus. Sirius is the archetypal model of the great teacher from above. Sirius is associated with Enoch from the Book of Enoch, Thoth to the Egyptians, Hermes to the Greeks, Mercury to the Romans, and also Janitor Lithius, or the keeper of hell, Anubis or Seth, the red dog god to the Egyptians, are all attributed to Sirius, and each taught humanity the liturgical science. This is where you get the medical symbol of the staff of Hermes, the caduceus. Sirius is the great star of initiation, the famous Masonic image of three pillars, where the sun, Osiris on the left, which corresponds to the left hemisphere of the brain, the logical, analytical half, the dominant male side, and the moon, Isis, on the right, which is the right hemisphere, the creative, intuitive, dominant, feminine side. In the center is the perfect being, the great initiative, or the enlightened one, denoted by Horus's all-seeing eye. The great architect of the universe, who is Thoth, the light behind the all-seeing eye on the US dollar bill, is illuminated by not our sun, but by Sirius, the sun behind the sun. Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and all other secret societies regard the five-pointed star of Sirius as the source of all life and hold the key to enlightenment. Sirian energy is the universal energy of love and wisdom. Vibrations or frequencies reach us from Sirius via the cosmic mental plane. The chakras, think like the internet or radio Sirius XM, as the micro to the macro. Just like the radio, you need to tune into the right frequency. Now, all cultures from all around the world, the dragon cultures of China, the Nagas of Southeast Asia, the Amarus of Peru, the Quetzalcoatlus or the Culcans of Mesoamerica, the serpent tribes of North America, to the Anunnaki, the Druids, the Gnostics, all had associations with Sirius. Sirius is a Bohemian star, meaning it is in a system with our sun. The Taoists seen the sun as a gateway or a stargate, and alchemists recognized the importance or the magical effects of the sun activating the Sirius energy when the energy of this star is illuminated. The dog of the sun, the dog that leads, the star of the celestial wolf, the star of Buddha, the star of Mercury. Sirius has had many names throughout the ages. All mythologies make reference to Sirius. You look at the Norse mythology, the Norse Tree of Life, you see the Rainbow Road. This is also in reference to Sirius. In Washington, D.C., you see the Oval Office, the obelisk, the Washington Monument, and the Pentagon. It just so happens that the hieroglyphic for Sirius is an obelisk, an oval, and a pentagram. Now, you could talk about Sirius just about all day, but this is a basic overview, and I hope you learned just a little bit to see how this symbolism is still prevalent today. Thank you. Love and light to you and yours.
In life's sweet, cosmic trance, Hapi, the god of the Nile, lived under the rocks in a cave, guarded by snakes. Hapi was believed to inhabit a cavern beneath the first cataract, and the annual flooding was often referred to as the arrival of Hapi. Hapi defied representation in images, and his true form remained elusive. Hapi's enigmatic nature lay in the fact that, unlike the visible rising and setting of Ra, the source of the Nile's inundation remained shrouded in mystery. Although it was associated with the star Sirius, the primary center of worship for Hapi was the island of Elephantine at the first cataract. He is shown as a fat man, a sign of prosperity, with the breasts of a woman. Some say one pendant breast is shown, which indicate his powers of fertility. Hapi holds two plants, the papyrus and the lotus, or two vases, from which he pours water. He is also depicted carrying a tray of food. See also Chabu Predynastic Kemet, he god of drink, is mentioned in a hymn to Hapi, the god of the Nile. Along with the god of corn, Nepra, and Ptah. Hapi, also known as the Hidden One, derived its name from the ancient term for the Nile River. As the deity presiding over the Nile, Hapi occupied a distinctive and indispensable role within Egyptian mythology. The annual inundation of the Nile held paramount importance for agriculture, the sustenance of flora, and the flourishing of all life forms in ancient Egypt. The Nile essentially served as the life force of the Egyptian civilization, with Hapi embodying this vital aquatic flow. His authority was viewed as being on par with that of Ra, the sun god, as the very existence of life in Egypt hinged upon the life-sustaining waters of the Nile. In the eyes of predynastic Kemetians, Kemet was considered a terrestrial reflection of the celestial body, and the cooling moisture originating from the Nile symbolized the cosmic fire of Ra, which manifested through the element of water. In the realm of occult symbolism, Hapi was representative of the fluidic energy of the astral body. Hapi's connection with the Nile was so deeply rooted in antiquity that he became intertwined with Alsir, Osiris, another deity linked to the river. Even in later dynastic periods, Hapi was invoked to facilitate the annual inundation, a prominent celebration across the land. The annual flooding of the Nile was a transformative spectacle, vividly described as water surging from distant lakes, converting the arid terrain into a fertile garden. The once monotonous landscape burst into a riot of colors, with the water taking on a crimson hue due to the presence of iron oxide, crafting a remarkable depiction of a river resembling blood. The rebirth of Egypt was intrinsically tied to the silt transported by the Nile's waters. A cycle split into 3 months of inundation followed by 9 months of arid conditions, symbolizing the period of human gestation. Hapi garnered reverence as the father of the gods and the vivifier of the land. Aligning with the primeval creative Neteru, including Nu, the abyss from which the sun god emerged. A hymn dedicated to Hapi paid homage to his pivotal role in nurturing Egypt and all its living beings. As Egypt was divided into two regions, Hapi was envisioned as a dual deity. Hap-Mate, representing the god of the North Nile, adorned with a crown of papyrus stalks, and Hap-Resort, symbolizing the god of the South Nile, wearing a crown adorned with lotus flowers. In depictions where Hapi was represented as a single entity, he was depicted holding both the papyrus and lotus, symbolizing the constellation Aquarius. A complex knot, meticulously tied by the two gods around a symbol known as the Hadi, symbolized the flow of vital energies coursing through the Nile. These energies were symbolized by the heart, lungs, breath, and blood. The knot served as a representation of the pharaoh's dominion over both regions of Egypt. Hapi's dual manifestations were also associated with goddesses Udit and Nekbet, and shared connections with Nut, Mut, and Aset as female counterparts. Hapi's iconography portrayed a figure embodying male and female attributes, featuring a male physique alongside female breasts. An embodiment of fertility akin to the duality evident in other Egyptian deities like Mut. In essence, Hapi symbolized the harmonious amalgamation of opposing forces, ushering in positive energy and renewal. Shown clearly through the 8 Ogdoads, the bedrock of Kemet's societal fabric. The significance of male-female complementarity was deeply ingrained in pre-synastic Kemetian cosmology, emblematic of the fluidic energy within astral work. In their capacity as pharaohs, they embodied Heru, Horus, who was the earthly manifestation of the sun, upholding cosmic order. The pharaoh's Heru or Horus name was symbolized by the Ha symbol. Furthermore, the pharaoh's Ka name represented the cosmic embodiment of the masculine-feminine, male-female principle. The pharaoh's authority extended to 2 female netters, Ushjit, the cobra goddess of the north, and Nekhebet, the vulture goddess of the south. The pharaoh's third name, the golden Horus, was symbolized by the sun at its zenith, representing the height of the sun's authority in the heavens and the pharaoh's authority on earth. The pharaoh also bore the title of the master of the 2 lands, symbolized by the bulrush of the south and the bee of the north. In this role, the pharaoh served as the unifier, establishing order and countering the forces of chaos personified by Set. Heru's power emanated from his mother, Auset, who acquired Ra's secret name, the source of his solar power, and the promise that Heru would rule on Earth. This highlights the fundamental interplay of male-female, masculine-feminine cosmic forces as the foundation of the pharaoh's right to rule. As the unifier of Kemet, the pharaoh, embodying the Heru. In twilight's gentle embrace, we find our rest. As day and night converge, we are truly blessed. With hearts aglow and dreams to hold so tight, we will embrace the darkness and welcome the night. Though this chapter ends, a new one shall begin. With hope in our souls, we'll let our spirits spin. In the tapestry of life, our stories entwine. With each closing chapter, a new adventure we'll find. Much appreciation to you for giving of your time with us at Motivation at Hand. To know is to know how. We trust you will come back soon.
It is across the board. It deals with your Roman, your Greek, your Egyptian, your Norse, your Hindu, your Vodun, and your Yoruba. Now, and also your Kabbalah. Now, be sure to note that Roman and Greek, the first people in Rome that set up the actual language, that set up the actual gods and all that was black people. The people in Greece that started the Greek language, that started the whole pantheon of the gods coming out of Egypt was black people. You see? A lot of the scholars don't tell you that. The first Greeks were black. The first Romans were black. Your Sumerians and everything was black. Your first Aryans that the white boy is calling himself the Aryan nation were black people. You see what I'm saying? So now the language, now how in the hell can the white boy start a language, you see what I'm saying, in Greece when he couldn't even speak coming out of the caves? Well, it took him almost 100 years just to compile an English language. 100 years ago they had old English and it didn't even sound the same as it does now. So how in the devil can he come up overnight and develop a language like Greek? Come to find out that all your scholars, Plato, Aristotle, and all of those were black people that went to the doggone mystery system. Your Parthenon was built by black people. Your Roman government, the first part of Rome and all of the buildings and all of the actual setup of Rome was black people. Then just like you have in America, you had white people that came in and took it over. You see? Now you got Count Boney's account that said that the white man had to be taught how to speak. Coming out of the cave, so how in the devil can he do some Greece? You see what I'm saying? Start Greece. So now we're going to give the Greek ones because these are black people. You see? Now, so we're going to leave this list here because you need to start pouring libations. You see what I'm saying? Now, there's not a lot of people because, see, we get into the technicality of it. Because when you don't deal with the spiritual world, it's got to be a technicality of what you do into the physical. So there's no, remember now, there's people in here, and there's another dimension where the people that you think are dead are waiting on you because that's life and this is actually death. So the people that you think are gone, your people that died, if they haven't reincarnated, they're sitting here with you. And when you pull these particular, you conjure up these particular invocations or the libations, you bring them back, and that's the force to help you. You see what I'm saying? That's the force that helps you. Now, the key to the whole thing is this. You need to start learning how to do these things within the last days. Some people say you got to get plants and all this with the plant. Look, get you a plant and make sure you don't drown out your plant. You first libate the plant because, see, I believe in pouring a good man set the doggone standard for that clown to be holy, and he ain't holy up a doggone. You see what I'm saying? Because once you really get into the really spirituality, 99% of what you think is holy is not. That's called spiritual ceremony, and it has nothing to do with the real spirituality whatsoever. You see? 98% of the churches talk against the real spirituality because if Jesus or whatever ever came back, they'd run from it. Because number one, it won't be no white man. Check. All right. So let's deal with this. Okay now. Okay, let me deal with some gods. Oh yeah, I want to call out.
Did you know that Jesus Christ, also known as Yeshua, was an extraterrestrial man from the Sirius star system, operating from the 9th dimension? He wasn't just a spiritual teacher or a messiah or even a son of God technically. He was a higher realm multidimensional avatar whose soul was sent to Earth to prevent humanity's fall into genetic and spiritual devolution and to restore the divine blueprint of the human race. Following the failures of Pharaoh Akhenaton's reign in 7 BC, the human race had suffered severe damage to its energetic DNA template. Known as the sphere of Amenti, which once held the full soul blueprint for all of Earth's races, had fractured, and large segments of humanity's lineage were locked away or lost. Powerful energetic seals, known as the Templar, Palladorian, Amenti, and Axian seals, had mutated large sections of human DNA, preventing higher consciousness, memory retrieval, and ascension. Humanity was drifting into a deeper sleep, unaware of its galactic origins or divine purpose. In response to this degeneration, two powerful factions emerged within the interdimensional guardian alliances, the Elohim and the Azurite Council. The Elohim, beings from the higher dimensions of Sirius B and HU3, had once been noble protectors of the human genome. But by this time, many among them had become increasingly biased, favoring specific bloodlines, particularly the Hebrew Melchizedek and Anu Melchizedek lines, with whom they shared ancestral links. Their intention was to consolidate power by controlling genetic lineage and spiritual teachings, and their influence spread rapidly through the Templar Melchizedek orders. The Azurite Council, aligned with the Ara Confederacy and the Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds, still held to the ancient Palladorian Covenant, the promise that all human races, regardless of lineage, would be given the opportunity to evolve, heal their DNA, and return to their original angelic form. But with Earth under quarantine and its grid locked by the UHF frequency fence, the only way to begin the realignment was from within. through the incarnation of avatars who could carry the divine frequency directly into the human realm. Thus, a plan was set in motion. In 7 BCE, under the guidance of the Elohim, a powerful soul essence was selected to incarnate on Earth, a 9th level avatar consciousness known as Jeshua 9. Unlike ordinary souls, avatars are born with a direct link to the higher harmonic universes. Jeshua 9 carried the full energetic alignment of 9 dimensions, making him a bridge between Earth and the higher worlds. But his incarnation was not purely of earthly origin. Jeshua 9 was not human in the traditional sense. His soul lineage originated from Sirius B, a waterworld system known for housing advanced civilizations connected to the Elohim. The Syrian race, particularly those from Sirius B and C, had played a foundational role in engineering early human DNA during the first and second seeding periods. They were part of the original architects of the Turanusium project, which sought to create a 12-strand angelic human capable of balancing matter and spirit. The Elohim, in collaboration with an Anunnaki aristocrat who held the title on Earth at the time as Jehovah 40, a powerful being who had helped seed the Syrian Anunnaki hybrid races, oversaw Jeshua 9's incarnation. His mother Mary was herself of ET Nephilim ancestry, the product of Syrian human interbreeding, and had been specially prepared through generations of genetic purification. Jeshua 9 was of spiritual royal lineage, born into the Melchizedek priesthood, one of the most ancient cosmic orders. This priesthood, originating far beyond Earth, governed the sacred science of ascension, stargate mechanics, and the law of one. On Earth, his bloodline was linked to the House of David and the House of Solomon, both of which were tied to Atlantean and Lemurian royal lines. Descendants of the original cloister races seeded from Sirius and Vega. But Jeshua 9's royalty was not about power. It was about service, frequency, and genetic capacity. His role was to restore access to the sphere of Amenti for those lineages that had been sealed off during the dark periods of Earth's history. Through his teachings and lineage, he would reawaken the spiritual codes within the Hebrew and Melchizedek tribes, helping guide them back to the path of unity and cosmic remembrance. Though remembered today through religious lens as Jesus, Jeshua 9 was, in essence, an extraterrestrial human hybrid, an interdimensional being whose consciousness originated from the 745 higher dimensions of Sirius B and HU3. His mission was cosmic in scope, to heal genetic distortions, to teach the true science of ascension, and to remind humanity of their galactic heritage. His teachings once included knowledge of chakra systems beyond the 7th, the structure of DNA beyond 3 strands, and the reality of stargates, reincarnation, and multidimensional selfhood. However, much of this wisdom was censored or erased by religious authorities over time. Jeshua 9 was later falsely crucified in myth, while in reality, he lived on, traveling to France, India, and Tibet, where he continued his spiritual work until his final ascension to HU3 in 47 AD. In truth, Jesus was a name given to a composite character, but the being behind the story, Jeshua 9, was a Syrian emissary born into Earth's realm to fulfill a galactic prophecy, the eventual reawakening of humanity's divine blueprint, and the return of the angelic human template.
Wins, right? Now, Jim Carrey drives a Ford Taurus, so we see right now that this Mithraic visualization is coming in. We know that the dog is associated with the dog hunter, Walter, in the number 23 from the cake and his birthday during Christmas time, right? We also know that a Taurus is symbolic of a bull. Now, in the Mithraic cults or mythologies, if you will, Mithras is often seen slaying a bull. But him slaying that bull is symbolic of himself in some type of way. Um, he is slaying the physical nature of himself so that life can come into being. You can see different characters trying to cut off life from coming from the bull or anything of that nature. You can see Mithras slaying the bull in a sense from his throat, if you will. But this is the cosmic bull. When we looking into different types of mythologies, Egyptology, Greek mythology, depending on what culture you're talking about, you're going to see this bull pop up several different times. But this is to show you that Jim Carrey is the star come down to earth, and the bull is the physical manifestation of Mithras himself. See, remember I told you Father was portraying himself to even leave superposition, to create a system for people to exist, so that all these things could come into material form and or being. That's why I got to show y'all some videos today concerning all this, because y'all need to understand how, me personally, I've had personal experiences is why I know all of this stuff. I think experiences is the best way to learn some stuff. It'll change who you are on the inside and the out, no matter what you do. So I've had experiences that definitely have gave me perspective. That's why when I've had the trauma behind it and had to go learn these things and look this stuff up sometimes, I don't look this stuff up because I don't know it already. Sometimes I look it up by happenstance, and it's confirmation for what I think I know sometimes. And for y'all, I look it up because I'm investigating these things, and we're journaling it and putting it down and trying to investigate and put it in some way that you guys can understand it. And somehow this stuff just comes together the way it do. It literally is what it is. But continuing on. So we know he drives a Ford Taurus to symbolize the physical manifestation into this material world. And the star falling out the sky was to confirm that to you. Him picking up the star, just like Superman picking up that penguin or that angel, was to signify the transference of the Holy Spirit, right? That's all that means, is that the Spirit is landed on you. But continuing on, because we
The most famous image in Mithraism is a god killing a bull. But this wasn't a sacrifice, it was a cosmic event. Ancient symbols suggest the bull represented the stars, and its death marked the ordering of the universe. For initiates, this act wasn't violent, it was creation. And that may be why the cult believed Mithras didn't just promise immortality, but victory and success in this life.
Now let's look at some of the zodiac symbols used in religious history. And we'll start with Taurus the bull. The age of Taurus was the age of agriculture, when the cows and animals that we were now beginning to use as food, that was just one of the qualities of the age of Taurus. The age of Taurus is between 4400 and 2200 BC. And keep in mind that Taurus the bull was recognized all over the world by all governments and all religions of the world. Everybody knew what it meant, except us today. So this is why you have words like holy cow, and the cow is still holy in India today. We see the Egyptians worshiping the sun between the horns of the bull. The sun is very important to the 12 signs of the zodiac. Most people do not realize that Taurus, being in the heavens as a constellational sign, was very, very important to Judaism. Here is Taurus, the cow, the bull, and he's in heaven. You see the sun behind him, so the sun is in the age of Taurus, the bull. And of course we have many stories about the Jews worshiping the golden calf. People don't understand what that story is all about. Moses goes up into the mountain to talk with God because it is time for God to change the ordinances of heaven. And it's important here to remember that each sign of the constellation lasts 2,150 years. Every 2,150 years, the world changes completely. All the great religions of the world realized that. And now Moses comes down with a new beginning of a new way to worship God. A new time when God is going to be worshiped in a different way. And so Moses goes up to find out what that new way of worship that God wants people to do. And so we have the story of the golden calf. Golden, well, because the sun is golden. And calf is a bull. So we have the golden calf, or the bull, Taurus, and the sun in the age of Taurus. Today, Israel is trying to bring back the good old days of bull worship. But it's impossible because Taurus is gone. We're in the age of Pisces. And they want to go back to the old days. The way we worship God in the old days was the golden calf. We're in Pisces, and we're at the end of Pisces.
Because we all had to be manifesting to the physical realm. But that's a whole nother story. But continuing on, right? So, we got Dalmatian, Pluto, Hades, right? We know Hades represent the underworld and or hell. If you look up the whole situation with Mithras, there are several depictions where it looks like he's in the underworld or some shape, form, or fashion, right? But we remember Mithras is a solar type of deity, and it's also associated with Christ, not all these other people they portray them. These are just mystical understandings or gnosis, Gnostic beliefs, if you will. But in some way, shape, form, or fashion, all the information goes together. You just have to know who's who. And if you know your spiritual family or your cosmic family or your universal family or your heavenly family, just like your earthly family, you have a heavenly family. And if you know them, anytime they collapsed into this physical world, you should be able to point out who's who. Even if you don't notice at first, eventually you gonna know everybody, and no matter what way they sugarcoat them in whatever culture, that, oh, this is God here, that's his wife right there, this is the child, and yeah, they might have tried to water it down, steal it, sugarcoat it, and show us in some variable form, shape, form, or fashion. We gotta understand that you gotta have the mind of Christ in these aspects. That's your foundation. If you keep that foundation, no matter what you add to it, it should only enlighten your perspective, not dense it and bear it down even more so that you have no light, right? But continuing on. So we see the fall in Canis Major, Sirius 9, right? Now, he's driving to work, and all of a sudden the radio go out of whack. And the radio station is 97.5, right? So we got to look up 97.5 to see what it speaks to us in the Strongs. We already know that Truman is living in a bubble, and he has to realize that he's practically in superposition in some type of way, and he's deciding to collapse superposition and leave it. So is he really leaving the world, or is he going into the world? Or is he leaving life and going into death, into the underworld? See, these are all analogies and or allegories we have to think about when Truman is actually leaving where he's at. All right. And then if he do leave and go into these underworlds or afterlives in different places, is that necessarily what we think of it as in our times, or is it something different? Now continuing on. So, 975. It means a book, a scroll, a document. Now, when we talk about scrolls and parchments, we know that in the Bible, God gave all of these men who were inspired by God words to write down. And a lot of these books carry their names, right? So, just like I tell my stories and stuff like that, like I wouldn't be able to tell y'all my story if some of these dates and names and all these different measurements of signature wasn't popping up. It kind of gives me some variable sense of signature, something that I can have a reference point from the unknown, from the unseeable, from the unperceivable, into this collapsed state, materially speaking, right? So we have to observe that. Now Truman does not know his whole life is broadcast. You know, he don't know everything he doing is just pretty much for the world to see. You know, and that's something that's gonna be a heavy burden upon him, because it's like, in a sense, he is everybody, right? Because everybody knows his entire life. They know what he do at every moment of his life. It's like they sharing his life with him, and it's in some oblivious state as far as from the vantage point that he has, right? But continuing on, 975. Oh, also means to test, to examine, to try, to prove. Now, pretty soon, Truman is about to test everything. He finna try everything. He's finna prove to himself that something about the world that was built around him is not what he think that it is, right? He's finna have a motion of discovery. So we know that in the Bible, when God gave all these words to men to tell people, he also told them to seal up those words until a appointed time, right? So a lot of times these prophets, or these men, if you will, they had to seal up a lot of the knowledge and the truth that was really plain, would have made understanding real plain to people, but they couldn't tell people those things because it wasn't for that time. Like, it's an appointed time, is because God is about to bring the last day into existence, which means that life and death and the bounds of space and time and everything in it, somehow those things will be broken. And those are motions of discovery for the general population, because and somewhere in the world, in space and time, somebody has already broken the bounds of things we're not thinking about. Might be just entertainment to most people, right? But continuing on. So it says, watchtower, or a tower, right? An isolated tower. I remember we talked about the Tower of God, which was some type of anime series, and how people had to fight through all these different levels to get to the top, and how nobody could really get to the top, right? Except for one king, who was the king of the towers, and even him, he couldn't get to the last floor, which I think it was 134 floors, right? But so we have these tests, and on each floor you have to take these tests, right, to prove yourself that you can rise above all these levels, right? Tower of God, and that's out of the H975. See, there's lexicons, and then there's Hebrew Strongs and concordances, so you got to be certain which one you're looking at. But you can apply all of these in whichever way and manner that they do apply, because they are applicable to everything that we're speaking of, right? But continuing on. So let's see what else we got going on here. Now, one of the main things they do to implement some state of delusion, or keep up some state of illusion around Mr. Burbank, is to make sure that they influence him through radio, through his peers, his friends, through everybody that is surrounding him, to not be encouraged to leave where he's at. So the radio is encouraging him not to fly. Uh, the newspapers is telling him that Sea Haven, where he's from, is the best place on earth, right? And all these different narratives are being created for him, so that he's either scared and some type of state of fear, right? Because we know when you talking about archons, if y'all know what archons are, when we talking about gnosis and all these things like that, and gnosticism, when we talking about the Nicolaitans and stuff like that, which is the whole thing about Saint Nicholas also, right? But we have to understand that the true gnosis is from God and or Christ, and we have to understand that all these characters are that somehow the devil get to get all the credit for. I mean, all these characters that the devil really getting credit for in some way, shape, form, and fashion is actually Christ. And that's the antichrist format of it all, is to paint the picture that all these other characters is the devil, right? The antichrist, when they actually Christ. And that's why I got to show y'all these dual natures, if you will, of everything, so you can see that the bond between the man and the woman is not necessarily androgynous, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm showing you quantum physics so you can understand the collapse of time and space, and how 0 and 1 was simultaneous, but one had to come into being Therefore, things had to collapse so that the physicality of nature of life and death could come into view, right? But continuing on. So we see they try to control things through the radio, though, through frequencies, if you will. And they make that kind of plain at some point in this movie. Now, he goes and stops by the newsstand, and at the newsstand you see magazines, Dog Fancy on one side, and you see something about a child on the other side, because they want you to understand that the dog and the child got something in common, and that they both are in some way, shape, form, or fashion one and the same. Even when you look up Christoph, or the Christ bearer character, you can see that he is also likened to like this dog-like character. And I showed y'all Saint Christopher in some time past in some video I've showed y'all before, right? The dog-looking saint, right? Because they know that there are some sacredcies about these dog-faced creatures and or characters when we talking about Sirius, the dog star, right? But we know that these creatures are also associated with fish-like gods. But we also know that these creatures are also associated with the bull also. That's why when you see the crowns on their head, oftentimes they have these arcs around the top of their head that are symbolic of bull horns, right? But continuing on. So we got Dog Fancy, right? And Child. He also gets a fashion magazine because even though he's married to this woman named Meryl, Meryl was his planted wife. Now, there was another girl that was planted into his world named Lauren Garland. I guess that was her fake name. But see, Lauren, here we go again. Just like Laura Tollins on number 23, Lauren, again, is another variation of the name Lawrence, right? Because there's a love story in that in some way, shape, form, or fashion where Christ had to die for what we already understand is the divine feminine nature and or divine wisdom that wanted to practically commit suicide and fall out of superposition for the sake of physical material existence, the existence of matter. Now, one way they form that matter for you is showing you the number 23 base pairs, right? Not only do they show you the 23 base pairs, they show you it associated with Suicide Blonde and how she's cursed by her father, and how Walter is cursed by his father. These are symbolic of God, because God, having to collapse superposition, was going to bring into form male, female, and every other living creature and or being. And those creatures was going to have male and female creatures too. And they were going to be able to procreate through these zeros and ones, if you will, so on and so forth. Now, we already talked about all of that, right? So this is being played out again right here in the Truman Show, except that from this aspect, it's a lot more innocent and it's a lot less dark. They showing you in a more light formatting how this is all being played out. So we see that the dog and the child have something in common, right? Like dog child, type of thing. So he gets the newspaper, he gets the fashion magazine because he's looking for Lauren Garland, right? We know that the garland represents like a wreath, or pretty much like a celebratory garnering when we talking about a champion or somebody winning something, right? A garland, if you will. So Lauren Garland, right? Which her name was also Sylvia. Sylvia name meaning. So Sylvia means wood, forest, or from the forest. That's because we know that Lauren, in some shape, form, or fashion, since she's the divine feminine aspect of these things, she's representing the divine mother. Just like Ishtar or Asherah are also always associated with trees and or poles. So you're going to see these variations through her name. Even though she told him her name is Lauren, her real name is Sylvia, right? And she ended up telling him that because she couldn't keep the secret that he living in a false world. She was actually the one to tell him the truth. I wonder why Lauren is always the one, right? Telling somebody something about some world. Just like Larry on Night of the Comet, right? Larry was boosting the movies, right? so that people could get the information. But continuing on, I'm gonna turn this on just in case it get too unlit in here. So we have Sylvia, right? Now, Sylvia is also associated with Rhea Sylvia, the mother of Romulus and Remus, right? And the nymph-like figures in the ancient Roman lore. So, Sylvia, here we go again, is that mothering, nurturing type figure who often is associated with deity and or lowercase gods in their infanthood, nurturing and raising them up, right? Sylvia, Rhea, right? Because we know that the wolf raised up Romulus and Remus, and those twins are associated with Rome, right? So that goes all the way back in some way, shape, form, or fashion to the Vatican and that whole culture. But continuing on, right? So we have Lauren, which is the girl he really liked. His wife, Meryl, he really can't stand her, but he married to her because she kept on throwing herself at him, and he was oblivious to the whole nature of what was really going on. But Meryl itself means shining sea or bright sea. Because remember, the sea is the abyss in some way, shape, form, or fashion. The sea is the life, the sea is the water. So in every way that you can symbolize that, he's going to have every battle and situation with water, right? Because his biggest fear in this bubble is water. Because his dad allegedly drowned in water when he was a little boy. And they wanted to show you these aspects to show you this Christ-like situation, right? Because his dad is like God in a sense, right? His name is Kirk. This goes all the way back to Captain Kirk, Scotty Beam Me Up, being a captain of a ship, so on and so forth, right? So Kirk is his name because they want to symbolize this aspect of him being some fatherly figure from above, right? And not only that, remember Samantha on Night of the Comet, who was aka Lucifer, said Scotty beam me up when she was inside the throne room or the radio station, if you will, right? The Godhead, right? The Keter, if you will, on the Sephiroth or the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, if you will, right? So continuing on. So next thing you know, after he leaves the newsstand, he ends up running into the twins. They show you the twins to symbolize this nature of first Adam, second Adam, to show you this symbolism of the pillars of Solomon's temple, if you will, right? To show you these aspects of the triune force, if you will, right? So you get these esotericisms popping up because soon as he gets pushed up on, you can see they wearing red and white polka dots. You're going to see the lady in red throughout this movie because this is, again, symbolizing the fall of man coming out of superposition. And in the physical form, that represents the biting of the fruit. And since that biting of the fruit is going to symbolize a red apple to most people, the lady in red is always going to symbolize our entrapment within the materialized state of being. Because our eyes is always going to be on that lady in red. We'll not pay attention to everything else if she shows up. But continuing on. So, if you really pay attention, remember, red and white symbolizes Christ's purity and his sacrifice. So, anytime you see this in this movie, just like in the number 23, this red and white is going to signify and or symbolize his purity and or his sacrifices. And remember, it says you crucify Christ daily, so anybody usually that you're going to see wearing red and white are the people that continue to crucify him daily. Some of these people seem like they're definitely in support of him, but they not letting him know that he living in some bubble, right? They playing along with the world, if you will. So these are the people representing the what he had to pay the price for so that they could have this life, right? But continuing on. Even when he was on the boat, when his father died, so to speak, you see the little boy wearing red and white stripes. Even when he's a little boy, in his pictures, he's wearing red and white polka dots. You're going to see his wife. She's wearing the red and white dress, polka dots, right? Red, white, red, white. You're going to see it over and over and over throughout the movie because it symbolizes not only the sacrifice and purity, it symbolizes the people, right? because the people in some way, in shape, form, or fashion are him as well, right? But they are not aware of the sacrifices they continue to incur on themselves and or him. So you're going to see those colors throughout the movie over and over again, right? Now, the twins back them up into a Kaiser chicken poster. Now, the thing that stood out to me about this chicken is that he had a crown on his head, right? And I'm like, yeah, that chicken ain't no regular chicken. So I looked up Kaiser to see what the name mean, right? It means ruler, emperor, or head of the chair. That's pretty interesting that they backed him up against that particular sign, because that chicken right there is representative of an archon, right? We've spoke of archons before, because they are practically, in a sense, some form of angels, right? Just to keep the long story short, right? And you see this symbolism here because, yet again, they want to show you this symbology crossing over into art form, into reality, and let you know that the symbolism is there, because who is doing all of this stuff and some entertaining factor to you anyway? All this gnosis and so on and so forth, trying to really sugarcoat it so you never know it, right?
In ancient Gnostic teachings, archons are not physical beings, they're spiritual parasites. Energetic entities born from distortion, feeding off fear, confusion, and separation. Think of them as programs in the Matrix designed to block your connection to Source and keep you locked in loops of illusion. They whisper doubt, stir division, and mask truth with false light. But here's the twist. They only have power when you forget who you are. You are divine consciousness cloaked in human form. Remembering that starves the archons. If this resonates, hit like and subscribe.
Do evil entities called archons secretly control our reality? According to a book banned by the church called The Reality of the Rulers, the archons are cosmic prison guards trapping our souls through reincarnation. But how exactly? Many believe the archons control societal structures, politics, and especially religion by distorting spiritual truths to keep us blind and divided. The archons manipulate and thrive on our fear, anger, and ignorance, keeping us from realizing our true divine nature. But where did the archons come from? The Reality of the Rulers reveals that the archons were created by a dark entity known as the Demiurge, a false god claiming to be the supreme being. Many believe the Demiurge and the archons are actually ancient aliens, but what if they're not from the stars but in our heads? Some believe the archons symbolize the dark parts of our minds, like ignorance and hatred, blocking us from realizing our divine nature. But how do we defeat the archons and escape? While some believe the archons are literal beings to overcome, others say that defeating the archons means overcoming the darkness within ourselves to uncover our inner light. What do you think?
Archons, for instance, in the Gnostic text, were these quasi-psychic beings that seemed to have an individual existence, but really were products of erroneous beliefs and the shadow beliefs of the spirits or the souls in general. They were never portrayed really as physical beings that walk this earth, like, possessed devils in the human form, but could be perceived at a psychic level. And that's why they were often called shadow figures. When a soul passed on, the archons were the ones who were said to cast them back into the earth for reincarnation, unless the soul was enlightened enough to pass them as the gatekeepers to go on to ascend to higher realms. So there has always been this tradition of these negative or darker forces. The question is, where do they come from? Do they have an individual existence, or are they really products of the collective soul psyche? I tend to believe the latter rather than the former.
Ever heard of a god who was feared by both angels and demons? His name was Abraxas. To the ancient Gnostics, mystical thinkers of the early Christian era, the universe wasn't ruled by a single, all-loving god. No, it was ruled by layers of spiritual powers, and above them all sat Abraxas. He wasn't good, he wasn't evil, he was beyond those things. A force that united opposites, light and shadow, creation and destruction, God and devil, in one terrifying being. Abraxas was said to command 365 heavens, one for each day of the year, each ruled by an archon, a lesser divine power. Even the God of the Old Testament, in Gnostic belief, was merely a blind archon, unaware of the higher truth, the truth of Abraxas. His image was strange and unsettling. A man's body, the head of a rooster, and two serpents for legs. In one hand a whip, in the other a round shield. But this was no fantasy. Roman-era amulets engraved with Abraxas have been found across Europe and the Middle East. Soldiers wore them for protection, for luck, and for power. His name, inscribed in Greek letters, was believed to hold magical energy. Even the psychologist Carl Jung wrote about him. To Jung, Abraxas represented the unity of all things, the light and the dark within us. He called him a god above gods, who shatters illusions and forces us to confront what we fear most, ourselves. So the next time you hear his name, remember, Abraxas is not here to save you. He's here to wake you up.
Right?
Have you ever...
On. So we have this ruler or this king or the head of the chair, right? The head archon, the head chicken, right? Now, in some aspects, you might hear that's Yah the Bev, but you do your own homework and you tell me who the head chicken is or who the head archon that they talking about. Because we know, I believe that those stories are misconstrued. See, I'm telling y'all these stories from some sense of experience in my own mind. Now, the way I seen some of these stories is the way that I believed them, because I knew the experience before I read the stories. And when I read the stories, I'm like, well, I'm surprised these stories exist at all. But somehow, the way some of those stories to me might be slightly off key. Don't mean they lying. It just mean, you know, if you wasn't first, how you gonna tell your side of the story? If you think you was the one and not the two, right? You gonna tell your aspect of the story from the one and not the two. But continuing on, right? So, I call these boys the polka dot twins. Now, if I'm not mistaken, these twins also are police officers. So, they also represent the red and blue or the black and white aspect. See, the black and white is the angelic aspect of this all. And the divine feminine and the divine masculine, if you will. And the red and blue is the enmity between the woman seed and the serpent seed, if you will, right? But continuing on. That's the twins also, if you will, right? There's that enmity. Now, we're going to show you these likenesses in all kinds of ways, because why they keep showing us Sirius is if they want us to know something about these Dogon or these Dagon from Sirius, right? Because I believe these stories all got something to do with each other in some way, shape, form, or fashion, right? Now, while Truman is at work, he, for some reason, got the fever. He want to leave already. He already want to travel and explore. He been wanting to explore the world since he was a kid, except that, you know, this whole boat trip accident and all these little setups was to traumatize him from ever wanting to leave his space or area of living, right? But eventually, none of that was going to pull the wool over him eventually, right? Even the red and white, and it representing all the people, it also represented the distractions around him, because his girlfriend or his wife wanted to distract him. His best friend, Marlon, wanted to be a distracting to him. Everybody wanted to be distracting to him in every way, shape, form, or fashion. They did not want him to think outside the box, if you will. And they really played a key part in making sure that he never did for at least 10,909 days, right? Another peculiar thing about the movie, because that's when the movie starts. We know 10 already represents the 10th Hebrew letter of the alphabet, the divine spark, or the Yod. That makes perfect sense if we're talking about Christ, because Christ, in a sense, is the divine spark. You'll find that 10th letter or the Yod in every Hebrew alphabet throughout the Hebrew alphabet. That means it's in all 22 letters in some way, shape, form, or fashion, signifying Christ's majesty and his mastery over the spoken word and the universe and everything in it, right? We're going to show you how the 22 letters apply anyway, because his dad, even though he played like he drowned in the water on the boat, right? That boat name is Santa Maria, just to give you this aspect of Saint Mary. His wife name is Meryl, meaning shining sea or bright sea, so that they can give you these aspects of the divine mother already in this movie. His mom's name is Angela, just to give you this aspect of a woman, divine feminine figure who has the aspect of some type of angel, right? His mom's name.
What if the universe was spoken into being, one letter at a time? The Sefer Yetzirah, or Book of Formation, is one of the oldest mystical texts in the Jewish tradition. It describes creation not as a single act, but as a weaving of 22 Hebrew letters and 10 Sephirot, sacred numbers that shape reality. This cryptic book became the foundation of Kabbalah, inspiring centuries of speculation on the powers of speech, number, and form. It whispers, He created His universe with 3 books: text, number, and speech. To read it is to enter the mind of God.
But what this book actually is, as the title suggests, is an exploration of how God created the world through the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and a mysterious concept which it calls the Sfirot Belima. And you may recognize this concept, as the Sfirot would become perhaps the most central part of Kabbalah later on, representing the emanations of God. In the Sefer Yetzirah, however, which came out long before works like the Zohar, it's highly unclear what the Sfirot Belima actually is supposed to be, other than that there are 10 of them. Scholars really disagree, and there is no consensus on the details of this system, although some have argued that the author of the Sefer Yetzirah was influenced by Neo-Pythagoreanism, and that the Sfirot are some kind of mathematical, geometric concept that is central to reality.
In the beginning, there was sound, and from that sound came letters. Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, written thousands of years ago. It teaches that the universe was created using just 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, not with hands, not with tools, but with vibration, speech, and number. 3 mother letters formed the elements, 7 double letters created the planets, and 12 elementals gave rise to the zodiac, time, and space. The book says, God formed the universe with letters, numbers, and words. It's not metaphor, it's cosmic math. Ancient mystics believed this was the blueprint of creation, a code that could bend reality or awaken your divine self. This is Kabbalah before it had a name. This is Sefer Yetzirah. Welcome to the Hidden Archive.
Right? His mom's name. So they putting all these narratives in there. His father, or his divine father who lives in the moon, who hasn't been born himself yet, if you ask me, Christoph, right? The Christ bearer, if you will. So they like one and the same to some degree. They both probably gonna be born once the show end, right? Because that's the end of Christoph's life, being on that show for 10,909 days. And Truman's life is gonna change after that also. Now, this 10,909 is the 210 aspect again, because you got the 10 right there, or the yod, right? The divine spark, the 0 and the 1 coming out of superposition. Christ being the child, right? That has to be the one to come out of superposition to collapse the whole situation. But we know that the child is the father also in this aspect, even if people get lost in that. When in superposition, he the father. When out of superposition, he the child. I mean, as simple as that. But continuing on. So they want to show you this here in this movie through Truman in the same way, through Christoph and Truman, and all these different aspects of him outside himself, if you will, through these different people and or characters. So while he at work, he's trying to look for Lauren, right? And he can't find her under her name, Lauren Garland, so he's looking for her name under Sylvia. Can't find her there. So he decided to try to book a trip to Fiji, right? So they know already, because he looking it up and he wants to go to Fiji. They know he want to go to Fiji, so they already controlling the media around him for him not to want to go nowhere, right? Sound kind of like familiar to today. This movie, I'm pretty sure, was before all the modernized technology that we have in our hands and pockets nowadays. You know, these smart devices now can seemingly predict your thoughts in some way, like advertise to you things that you want to buy and or purchase. So in some way they was doing that to him, but it was simply because they literally was watching him through everything he was doing, so they knew. Matter of fact, to show you Meryl was like this Lucifer-like character, they show you her descending down the stairways, turning on the light in front of the eagle. They also show you her on this life raft with America to show you she has this Columbia-like aspect. And not only that, just like Samantha on Night of the Comet, low-key was controlling the airwaves, she too is symbolic of the airwaves and being controlled by the radio, because she's always advertising to Truman some products, good, or services. And it might not necessarily make sense on this movie because it was before its time, but if you link that with like some shows like Black Mirrors and some different stuff like that, her advertising like that all the time make you wonder if something tragic happened to her and he put some like Neuralink inside of her to keep her alive, and then he couldn't afford it. So maybe that he had to pay for them advertisements to keep her operating in the physical realm. Boy, I done seen that on so many different things. I'm not finna get into that, but continuing on. So what else? Sea Haven all of a sudden is supposed to be the best place on earth now because he's thinking about going to Fiji. Now, Fiji is symbolic of so many different things. Because if we go to the seal of Fiji, right, and I'll take you to the coat of arms, what we gonna see on the coat of arms is a lion with a crown on. Obviously, that's symbolic of God or Christ to me. And within his hands, you have a cocoa pod, right? But to me, that's just God creating a system, and that's inside of superposition in some way. He's having superposition in his hands. Now, within superposition, you have all the nourishments and needs you have. So you have these bananas, you have the trees, and you have the sugar cane. And then within the system, you also have a dove with a branch in its mouth symbolizing peace. You also have the cross of St. George, because we know St. George conquered the dragon in some shape, form, or fashion. So St. George in its own manner is symbolic of St. Michael slaying the serpent, if you will, or conquering death in some way, shape, form, or fashion, right? You also have atop of the seal a sea boat, right? Now, usually this sea boat might symbolize fishing and different things like that. But to me, this boat symbolizes the Egyptian boat that people would, pharaohs and royalty would take into the afterlife or to the next world. Because as we see, Jim Carrey is going to take this same boat into the next world himself. And the boat name, again, is Santa Maria, to give you that biblical aspect that that's Saint Mary. The boat is the mother, right? Or the matter of it all. Now, how can we signify the matter even further? Because if we go back to the number 23, this curse, right? This biological genetic code that would create material man, if you will, 666, if you will. We see the 210 and 10,909 days, right? Because you have two nines, right? 909, and then you have 10 at the front, the yod. Now, you have 210 in that if you want to break it down to see it that way. You put 9 and 9 together, that's 18. So you also have this 666 present, right? Life path number being 6, right? And then you have 6 representing Adam and man on the 6th day, and so on and so forth. We know that Christ is the son of man, so even in an aspect of him, he represents that as well, right? All popping up right here in some way, shape, form, or fashion, because they are conveying these things to you. You just have to see through the veil and know what this entertainment is all about. Now, the number 13 is symbolic to Bam Adebayo. We already talked about all of its esoteric meanings on the dollar bill, but the number 13 in the Hebrew alphabet is the letter Mem, right? The letter Mem is associated with water, or matter, if you will. So we thinking about the divine mother, or the divine wisdom, or gnosis again, if you will. But see, this is God wisdom. This is not the wisdom of man. Not only that, we'll look into the letter Mem in 13 so you can understand how this applies to the whole aspect of this story. Because remember, in the number 23, the number left him alone for 13 years. Now, when you bridge that together with the Truman Show, his father, who was supposed to be dead in some shipwreck, right? He was disappeared for 22 years. We know 22 is the total amount of letters in the Hebrew alphabet, right? So that's the Aleph Tav from beginning to the end, through and through, just through the number of years that Mr. Kirk had disappeared, right? Why is that important? We're going to show you. Now, why did he appear to drown in some water, but yet he survived? Because if we looking at this like he God, we got to assume that he's like from Sirius or something like that. So he's one of these Dagon, and the Dagon is known for living under the ocean, in the water, and or sea anyway. So I'm going to really just dig deep in here and put my own entertainment purposes and allegories on it and say that even though they showed how he survived, I'm just going to presume that he went to the underworld, if you will, right? Continuing on. And he had to go to the underworld so that his son could live. So that's why they showed you that. But now when it was time for the union to come back into superposition with our physical being, with our spiritual marriage, that is symbolic of the wedding banquet, if you will. And remember, the father is the one who had to prepare the wedding banquet, right? Now continuing on. So Fiji is where he was trying to go. So you got all these symbolisms. Now, why do I call the cocoa pod symbolic to superposition? Because to me, if there's a physical place on earth for superposition to exist, I'm finna just jump off a bridge with this for entertainment purposes here in a minute, and think there's two key elements to that. God's temple on earth, or Solomon's temple as we knew it, was probably a key element to this place, or getting there, if you will. And the place I told y'all about from the night of the comet in Greenland, and all these different anomalies that popped up happenstancely, right, from my dreams in Montana, right? Talking about newfound land and this mythological place called Hyperborea. Now, the reason I say that is because the North Pole and the Santa Claus, St. Nicholas whole thing keep popping up. And I know that the Nicolaitans or St. Nicholas and all of that got to do with the Gnostics, right? And not only that, I know that the Santa Claus for real, like I said, if we looking at it like we supposed to, like Christ is really these people and not the imitators, and we looking like God can actually break the bounds of time, and that these characters is really giving you increments of the truth. You just got to learn how to put the pieces to puzzle together. You got to remember, on Night of the Comet, Hector was also dressed up like he was Santa Claus coming bearing gifts too. Remember, Christ know who been naughty or nice. Christ the one supposed to know who been good or bad, so be good for goodness sake. Christ the one supposed to come bearing gifts and presents and all of this stuff like that. And these gifts and presents is supposed to be the kind that you can't even really ask for real, right? So they imitating you. The devil always want to take authority and claim over what God coming to do, or Christ is coming to do. But you got to remember that that's just a reverse psychology on you. Remember the truth for what it is, and then see through the bull, right? It's a bull for a reason, right? But continuing on. So he want to go to Fiji, and Fiji is symbolizing to us so many different things, right? To me, Fiji is symbolizing to us going back into superposition, and that's symbolic of the lion holding the cocoa pod. But I'll tell y'all more specifically why here shortly. But continuing on, right? So his boss walks up to his desk, and I already seen Lauren once, but I know that most people don't get the dual nature that Lauren and him got something to do with each other, that kind of sacrificially speaking, that he is the wisdom. So people don't know that when they breaking down these characters in divine masculine and feminine forms, taking them out of their superposition and actually giving them a male and or female identity. And superposition, they only have the identity as one, husband and wife, right? When the man leaves his mother and father's house and finds his woman, they become one, right? That's superposition. Now, outside of superposition, you're going to see a female and or male. But that doesn't take away the fact that they have something in common with each other, right? Now, continuing on from that. So, the next person, since you think Lauren ain't got no male aspect, the boss pop up of the company, name is Lawrence, right? So we got this Lawrence thing popping up twice. That's a dual aspect of the name. Now, somehow in this movie, we get this aspect just like we did in the last movies. Now, don't ask me why. We just gonna figure it out and go on from there, right? We're gonna paint the picture and continue to move along. Now, the boss, Mr. Lawrence, right, is asking him to go to Harbor Island to a place called Wells Park for a possible prospect for him to close a deal. Now, Wells Park is simply for him, symbolizing him going down into the well, right? Or going into the garden, going into the well, into the abyss, right? Symbolic of him going into some sacred place, right? But he's fearful of even going there in the first place because of this whole situation that happened in the boat with him and his dad 22 years ago, right? So he's hesitant, doesn't want to go. Now, the boat is red and white because the boat is symbolic of him crossing over from life into death, right? The river or the water, if you will, is symbolic of him crossing like the river Styx, right? In Greek mythology, that's the river that leads to the underworld, if you will, or the Eridanus River in the constellations, right? All of these aspects of this water are just symbolic of him crossing over into the afterlife, if you will, right? Just like you got to pay the ferryman, and once you pay him that little gold shillings, he's going to take you across the water of the dead, so to speak, and so on and so forth, right? But that's all symbolic of that, and he's fearful of that because he know in order for everybody to have life, he going to have to do it at some point, right? Because, I mean, the whole world watching this show, it seemed like everybody is Truman in some way. And until Truman come off the show, they not going to come out of the show either. Literally. In some type of way. So the ferryman asked him, is it a one-way trip or is he going there and back? Now the ferryman being funny, so he didn't even like the fact that the ferryman asking that. And then he slid the ferryman $1 in particular because the dollar represents everything to do with sacredcy, symbolism, and esoteric knowledge, right? Including the number 13 specifically, which, since all of this got to do with the abyss and the underworld, right, and the harrowing of hell, because that's what happened after Christ died on the cross, we know that the hell we're thinking of is symbolic of the abyss. But we got to think about this when we're talking about esoteric, kabbalistically, talking about in all of these different manners of study, right? So on the Kabbalistic tree of life, there are 10 sephirots, or 10 circles, or 10 spears, right? And between those 10 spears, there are 22 connections, right? And these 22 connections, for some reason, they explain to you things I've experienced. And I be thinking it's strange sometimes, but I'm just trying to be openly honest as I can about some of these experiences. But some of these texts and these books and this knowledge is explaining stuff that I could have swore was only known to my brain, which I should have knew better than that in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But I think mine is experiences, and so are theirs in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to write the things that they did, and certain people would ever be able to relate to it because they've been through some of those things themselves. So there has to be some aspect of divine intervention or experience with some of these prophets and or writers, right? But continuing on. So we had the $1 symbolizing all these esoteric things, right? We got the all-seeing eye on there, the pyramid, and God we trust, and the little bitty owl over there hiding in the corner, right? And all these different things symbolically hidden within a dollar bill. We know that the Federal Reserve was started in Savannah, Georgia, right? So we got all these different things that we could break down and really go back to and show you the esoterica. I might show you one aspect of that just so you can see how deep this actually goes in the geography. But continue.
Psalm 63 verse 7. Because thou hast been my help, therefore in the shadow of thy wings will I rejoice. Amen. We're up for the letter Mem. Mem. The Mem sings about kingship and water, both of which begin with the letter Mem. Melech for king and Mayim for water. The mem is one of the 5 letters, another one of those 5 letters, that have both a normative or usual form, this is the open mem, and a final form which is used at the end of a word, which is called the closed mem. Now the word for water, mayim, has both forms within it. The open mem, which signifies the flowing bodies of water such as rivers and streams, and at the end of the letter, the closed mem, signifying closed systems such as lakes, ponds, and even oceans. The tiny yud between them in the word mayim speaks of the droplet of water, the basic unit of all water, whether closed or open. Now, positioned at the centre of the alphabet, with all 3 letters of melech being present in reverse order by its side, we're looking at the king, the melech, sitting enthroned, as it were, in the midst of his subjects who stand in attendance. Similar to the layout of a chessboard, or the way an army maybe would go into battle. In the multitude of people is the king's honour. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 28. Now we mentioned kingship and water, but how are these 2 melodies to be harmonised within this letter? The secret is in another word which begins with mem, which you all know, Mashiach, Messiah. We usually associate the idea of king with pomp and remoteness, but this king is King Messiah, and he redefines the nature of true kingship, which can be perfectly illustrated by the metaphor of water. Now, water is an amazing miracle, as we all know. It's the combination of 2 gases that coalesce and form a liquid. It's a miracle. The King Messiah's reign will also be a miracle, the glory of God on earth. Where there is water, there is life. Everything needs water. What do the astronomers look for when they peer through their telescopes, etc.? They look for, when they find a planet, they look for water on that planet. Untold millions of gallons are poured on the earth every day, but mercifully they arrive in tiny droplets that we call rain. That's the grace of God, that it comes in tiny bits. A little bit in our life, isn't it? The grace of God. He gives us as much grace as we can handle, as much understanding as we can handle. That's the grace of God. Hallelujah. So all this is a metaphor for the King Messiah's reign. Gallons of blessings supplied in manageable sizes. Hallelujah. Now the flow of water is always from a higher place to a lower place, isn't it? So the King Messiah will dwell on Mount Zion, but also with those of a contrite and humble spirit, because the water of blessing flows down to the lowest place. So we don't mind being in the lowest place. Finally, water cleanses. Water restores, water revives. King Messiah's reign will be like the blessing of water of Mayim. Now in Judaism, water has a link with love. Mem is the 13th letter in the alphabet, and the numeric value of the word for love, which is ahava, is also 13. That's the aleph is 1, the hay is 5, the beit is 2, and the hay is 5, making 13. Another link can be made with love by noting that the numeric value of the mem is 40, and a baby spends 40 weeks in the waters of the womb, the place of secure love. So this is a link between the mem, between mayim, water, and between the waters of the womb, and the blessing of God, and the place of security and the place of love. Is wonderful thoughts. Now we can develop this association between water and love by an interesting reading of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 7. It says this, it says, love bears all things. This strength that love possesses is similar to water. The gentlest of all the elements, water nevertheless has phenomenal strength. It's able to support a steel ship of tens of thousands of tons. Even as God upholds all things through Christ, the King Messiah, yet he is as gentle and soft as morning mist. All of these thoughts are within this mem. Now the mem rules by right. He's the king, he's melech, but he rules by right, not by might, and his subjects love him. This is what is coming to the earth, actually, the rule of love and goodness and justice and truth. Hallelujah. Finally, the Hebrew word Amen, which we all know, consists of the three letters Aleph, Mem, and Nun. And Judaism teaches that these are an acronym for El Melech Ne'eman. And this means God, the trustworthy king. For the Mem is not just a king, but the king. King Messiah, Melech Moshiach. Now to summarize this letter, when you look at this letter, think of King Messiah and his people. Think of love. Think of the power of love and the power of water, which are similar. And think of the gentleness of water and the gentleness of love, and of the Messiah King and the strength of Messiah King. This is the song of the
free
men.
online course on Kabbalah and Western mysteries. Please find the link in the description below this video. In the early Kabbalistic teachings, Dart was not considered a Sephirah. Also, there is no number assigned to Dart. As the Sefer Yetzirah says, 10 Sephirot Blima, 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. In the course of the development of the Kabbalistic teachings, Dart was sometimes regarded as one of the Sephirot. Dart is an important principle on the Tree of Life and is sometimes referred to as the invisible Sephirah. Dart means gnosis, because Dart is the transformation point, in which the vibrational frequencies of the higher principles are transformed so that they can be recognized by human consciousness. We distinguish a higher and a lower aspect of Dart. Dart Elyon, the higher aspect of Dart, is considered the external reflection of Keter and connects the male, that is Chokhmah, with the female, Binah. As it is said in the Sefer Bereshit, and Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived. Adam and Eve are symbols of the original male and female principles. Gnosis is a synonym for sexual, mental, and spiritual union. Dart Takton, the lower aspect of Dart, refers to the abyss, the separation between the higher and lower planes. The abyss is a symbol of the separation from the spiritual levels that we humans cannot directly reach, from the lower levels into which we are incarnated. The abyss separates the upper three Sephirot, Keter, Chokhmah, and Binah, the pure spiritual principle, from the 7 lower Sephirot, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. At the same time, Dart Takton also stands for the connection between the higher and the lower planes, and it represents the bridge over the abyss. Dart is like the focal point of a lens in which the higher principles transform, so that they can be recognized and grasped by human consciousness. This principle becomes apparent in the symbol of Dart, the prism. Through the prism, the light is refracted and visible in the form of the 7 spectral colours. Those correspond to the 7 lower Sephirot. The prism is considered the cornerstone of the world as described in the Zohar. that when the Holy One, blessed be he, was about to create the world, he detached one precious stone from underneath his throne of glory and plunged it into the abyss, out of which the world started, spreading itself to right and left and into all directions, and by which it is sustained. That nucleus, that stone, is called Evan Shetihah, foundation, as it was the starting point of the world. The following assignments have proven useful for the practical work of the student of the mysteries. We use Yod He Vav He, Elohim, as the divine name. Both Yod He Vav He and Elohim combine the polarity of male and female, as this is a function of Da'at. In Yod He Vav He, Yod and Vav are considered male, and the two He are considered female. Elohim can be seen as a female word form with a male plural. The archangel of Da'at is Uriel. The meaning is light of God or fire of God. The angels of Da'at are the Irin, guardians, who are also called Grigori. They observe mankind and watch over them. They are also seen as teachers of mankind, who taught scripture, science, and wisdom. In Kabbalistic astrology, we assign the planet Uranus to Da'at. Uranus shows how and in what area a person takes the impulse for further development and strives for change. Uranus is sometimes called the Great Transformer. Remember an important function of Da'at on the Tree of Life. Hebrew Etz Chaim is transformation. The allegorical representation of Da'at, which symbolizes its importance as a transformation point, as a bridge over the abyss, and as a connecting point of opposites, is the face looking in two directions. The spiritual experience of Da'at is the crossing of the abyss. Thank you for watching. Join us for more videos on the Tree of Life.
But continuing on. So he has anxiety from this sunken boat. This is the aspect of him and his father being a fisher of men, right? Because we all know that Christ is symbolic of the fisherman, right? Or the ichthys fish, right? And that's funny because we talking about this Dagon, Dogon, and they all symbolic of fish and fishmen, and you wonder why all these esoteric parabolic formalities are spoken of. So you kind of get to wondering why Christ say some of the stuff he say, knowing that he mean more than a couple and or a few things. He walked over the water to show that he had control over the abyss and or life or death, that he had control over the elements and every nature of being in the elemental sense of 3D nature, right? He expressed control and power and authority over those things so that people could understand his nature of being. Without him having to come down here, scold, and knock everybody off. But we know we like to see crazy stuff. We don't like to, I mean, who don't like violence, boy? I see so many fights just scrolling down the timeline half the time. I'm like, boy, people love seeing somebody get punched on, probably. It's sick. But continuing on. We just wired like that, ain't it? Lord help us. The number 22 is important, though, when we talking about Walter or Truman's dad, because obviously it's the number of Hebrew letters in the alphabet, but the Hebrew alphabet itself is speaking on creation and how God brought into being everything out of superposition. Once you understand superposition, man, and quantum physics got anything to do with God, you start wondering what any of these ancient texts is really telling us about, for real. You can't unsee certain stuff once you know it. Now, at some point in this movie, Truman is working in the garden, and you can see a homunculus or a little gnome pop up because they want you to cross over both movies. They want you to cross over both movies and know that for sure what you see is what you seeing. Like, okay, this is him as the homunculus. He's the created creature. He's the created being. Put him in this little bubble or this little world. And so you see within that world, in the garden that he's working in, a little gnome or homunculus sitting on top of a globe, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I think even when he started figuring stuff out, somehow the gnome was moved off of the globe and was actually standing off of the globe in the garden. And I think that was to signify that he was about to come up out of that whole little trap that he was living in. But so you see the gnome pop up in this whole signifying characteristics, so you can understand that all of these things go together. Now, how do we know that his wife is Lucifer, controlling the radio and the airwaves, so on and so forth? Now, if you go back to Agatha, Walter's wife, Jim Carrey's wife on the number 23, they went over a friend's house, because remember, Walter didn't have no friends. Walter also was an Aquarius. That's very significant if you understand Egyptology, when we talk about the zodiac signs of Egypt and what the Aquarius or the water bearer to them represented and symbolized. Because to me, it represented everything to do with superposition. But anyway, they went over the house, and this is how you know Agatha or the Divine Feminine was Lucifer in any type of way, because they at the house playing charades, and they wearing the little red pointed hats, because they all got on the Phrygian hats. Remember, she's the Statue of Liberty in some type of way, so even she wears this Phrygian cap, right? But they playing charades where you got to guess what the person is enacting. They miming the truth to you. Remember, I showed you the mime on Superman 3. They was miming to you the truth without telling you the truth in plain and simple words. Black and white, right?
Butterflies. Birds. Flies. Lord of the Flies.
Representing the angels. So the truth is being presented to us through radios and TV in some form that we can see in the 3D. You know, by sight, by hearing, by sound, by speaking, so on and so forth. But if we don't comprehend how this art form is being displayed to us for, I guess, our own comfort, which I don't see what's comfortable about it. I feel like they trying to keep us in this state of being, but I feel like not too much. It was just meant to be for so long, and eventually we was gonna come up out of this state of not understanding nothing. But continuing on, all right. So we seen the association of the homunculus and or the gnome by him working in the garden at home, because they want you to be able to put two and two together. He's the child that was brought into the world, that was built around him, for him, and everything else like that. Lauren was the only one that was trying to tell him that truth. Like, this, everything is fake. The sand is fake. It's all for you. All this was built around you, right? He didn't know what she was talking about. But he was changed after she told him that little seed that she planted in him, because she had that look in her eye, right? That almond look in her eye, right? He had a deep sense of feeling for her and knew that whatever she's saying must have been real. So he just never let go of what she said. He might have buried it, but it came back to the surface at some point. All right, we got to take a break.
In the Hebrew language, there's a tiny, almost untranslatable particle called T. It's made up of the letter Aleph and the letter Tav, and it appears more than 7,000 times in the Bible. One day Jesus said, "Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and these are they which testify of me." What's so powerful is that when Jesus reveals himself in Revelation, he declares, "I am the Alpha and the Omega." But pay close attention. The Alpha and Omega are the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. Yet Jesus didn't speak in Greek here. He actually said, "I am the Aleph and the Tav," the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The Aleph and the Tav together form the ET. Every time you see ET in the scriptures, it's pointing to Jesus. Today, the Hebrew we know comes from after the Babylonian exile with different letter forms, but originally these letters were symbols full of meaning. The Aleph, the first letter, represented the head of a bull, a symbol of sacrifice. The Tav was drawn as a cross. Jesus was saying, "I am the Aleph and the Tav." The Aleph is the sacrifice foretold, the Tav is the sacrifice fulfilled. With this, Jesus shows us that every sacrifice in the Old Testament was pointing to his perfect sacrifice on the cross.
Okay, get
If
ready
this
for
message
this. What if God literally left his signature in the very first sentence of the Bible? I mean, a real signature. We're about to explore this mysterious, untranslated word that some people are convinced is exactly that, a personal mark from the Creator himself.
You know this line, right? It's probably one of the most famous sentences ever written. But this is the English version. In the original Hebrew, there's a whole other layer, hiding in plain sight, that most of us have totally missed.
So what if a single, tiny, two-letter word got left on the cutting room floor on the journey from Hebrew to English? A word that might just change how we look at, well, everything that comes after. Here it is, Genesis 1:1 in the original Hebrew. See that small highlighted word right in the middle? It's pronounced et. It's made of two letters, aleph and tav. And here's the crazy part. It has no direct translation in English. You can actually take it out, and the sentence pretty much means the same thing. So why is it even there?
Well, linguistically, it's called a direct object pointer. Sounds technical, I know, but stick with me. Ancient Hebrew didn't have punctuation like we do, no commas, no periods, so this little word was super important. It connects the verb, created, directly to the object, the heavens. Think of it like a comma in English. You know, the classic example, right? Let's eat, Grandma, is an invitation to dinner. Let's eat Grandma, well, that's a horror movie. That one little piece of punctuation changes everything. And that's kind of what the Aleph Tav does. It directs the whole meaning. Okay, so it's a piece of grammar. Got it. But what if there's more to the story? What if the letters themselves, Aleph and Tav, the first and the last letters of the Hebrew alphabet, are sending their own symbolic message? To figure this out, we need to put on our linguistic detective hats and go way back to the very origins of these ancient letters.
So let's start with Aleph. Its journey actually started as an Egyptian hieroglyph of an ox head. Over time, it got simpler and more stylized. And here's a cool part. If you look at that Paleo-Hebrew version and just kind of turn it on its side, you can totally see the Greek letter alpha and our modern letter A. It's been with us this whole time.
So that original picture, the ox, was a powerful symbol of strength, of leadership. And so the letter Aleph, the very first letter, came to represent strength, the leader, the number one. In Jewish mysticism, it even represents the absolute oneness of God.
All right, now let's look at Tav, the last letter. Its origin is even simpler. It was just two cross sticks, a mark. It evolved from a simple X or a cross into the letter we recognize in Hebrew today.
And this ties directly into what it meant. The Tav was literally a person's mark. For thousands of years, people who couldn't write would sign contracts with an X. That was their Tav. It was their personal mark, their sign, their binding signature on a covenant.
So let's put these two pieces of the puzzle together. Aleph, the leader. Tav, the mark or the signature. If you combine them, the Aleph Tav in Genesis 1:1 isn't just grammar anymore. It could be read as the leader's mark. It's like God's signature, placed right there at the beginning of all creation.
Now that is a huge idea, right? But the story doesn't stop in the Old Testament. Let's jump forward and see how this idea of a divine signature just explodes with meaning in the New Testament.
Just listen to the beginning of John's Gospel. It's a direct echo of Genesis. When John says all things came to be through him, the Word, some argue he's making a profound connection. Remember how the Aleph Tav is the grammatical tool through which creating is connected to the heavens and the earth? John seems to be identifying a person, Jesus, with that exact creative signature. And the connection gets even more direct. In the book of Revelation, Jesus says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega." Now think about this. The author of Revelation was Jewish. He thought in Hebrew. The Greek Alpha and Omega are just the first and last letters of their alphabet, just like Aleph and Tav are for Hebrew. So any Jewish reader hearing this would immediately understand the meaning behind it. I am the Aleph and the Tav. Okay, this all leads to a really important question. A signature makes a contract legally binding. So why on earth would God, the creator of everything, need to sign a contract? What could he possibly be promising? The answer, according to this line of thought, is found in a really dramatic and frankly kind of weird story from Genesis 15, an ancient life-or-death ritual called a blood covenant between God and a man named Abram. The scene is just wild. God has promised Abram land and a huge family, and Abram basically says, "How can I know you'll really do this?" And God's answer is this strange ceremony with a smoking firepot and a flaming torch that passes between the carcasses of sacrificed animals. In the ancient world, you have to understand, this was the most serious contract you could make. Both parties would walk down a path of blood between these animal halves. And doing that was like taking a self-imposed curse. You were basically saying, if I break my end of this deal, may I be torn apart just like these animals. This was a promise, sealed with the penalty of death. But here's where the story takes a mind-blowing turn. In a normal blood covenant, both people walk that path. They share the risk. But in Genesis 15, God puts Abram into a deep sleep. He's just a witness. He doesn't take a single step. Only God, represented by that fire and torch, walks the path alone. Do you see what that means? God takes on the entire burden, all the risk, and the entire penalty for breaking the promise, which is death. He takes it all on himself. It's completely one-sided. So God makes this incredible, one-sided promise, guaranteeing it with his own life. And that just sets the stage for the ultimate finale of this whole story.
And here's the problem. Down the line, Abraham's descendants, humanity, they break their end of the deal. They fail. But they hadn't walked the path. God had. So when the contract was broken, who was legally on the hook to pay the price? God himself.
And this brings us right back to that signature. The argument is that God paid that penalty by affixing his own signature, his mark, the Tav, the sign of the cross, the very symbol that kicked off our whole investigation.
So let's wrap this all up. That tiny, untranslated word in the first verse of the Bible, the Aleph Tav, is seen as the signature of the leader. It's the sign of a covenant made at the dawn of time, a promise that God bound himself to keep, and a debt that he ultimately paid with his own mark.
It's a pretty incredible thread, right? Tying together grammar, history, and theology in a way you'd never expect. And it really makes you wonder, what other profound secrets are still out there, just waiting for us, hidden in plain sight?